and thank you for joining us for this candidates forum for the District 1 City Council seat. There are three candidates for this seat. They are alphabetically by first name: Alexander Matias, Brenda Placati, and Carl Bonner. Last night, Mr. Bonner sent an email stating that due to a scheduling conflict, he would not be able to join us this evening. Our format for tonight will be opening statements, followed by HPOA approved scripted questions and closing statements. 2 minutes will be allocated for the statements and the responses to the questions, and the candidates will be informed of the time remaining by the following signs. Yellow is for 30 seconds, blue is for 10 seconds, and orange is for time's up. We'll begin the first question with Ms. Placati. What strategies would you use to reduce crime and improve safety in our community?
So, number one is we have to get more police on force. We need to be working with our city manager and our human resource department to get the hiring, looking at the pay rates, making sure that we are paying equitably for the area. I've also been in talks with Sheriff Tom Ferreira to see how they would work with us. And he is looking at trying to support us through a 1 to 3 year contract. And he is not interested in taking over Vallejo, but he is very interested in supporting us. Um, so getting that relationship built is very important for us to get the support we need until we can staff up our own department. And we need to make sure that the policies and procedures that our police officers follow are tightened so that they can really perform at the most highest level for all of our community.
Thank you. Mr. Matias, did you hear the question?
I did. Can I just ask a clarifying question though?
Sure.
Um, are we gonna come back to opening statements? I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Uh, we, yes, we can.
Okay, I just
You're
wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything, so I'll answer your question.
okay.
So, thank you for the question. And so, what I'm proposing is very targeted, and I hope the city can start to see results right away. So, when it comes to recruitment and retention, I want to make sure that we have a retention uh, plan for the officers who are currently on the ground, and then a recruitment plan for those that are making their ways through the academy, and also those that may be considering joining our force. Um, those officers are necessary to address crime. In addition to the support that the council is currently considering with the sheriff, I'm also proposing unarmed and armed guards to be patrolling our business districts. There is a very real sense of fear in our community at this time. And I want to make sure that we can use that, similar to what other cities have done, to keep our community safe. I will also be relying on feedback I specifically got from police officers due to some time I spent with them a few weeks ago. And that is around two key areas. Number one, I will be working very closely with Public Works, ensuring that the bot dots can be put on streets to deter folks from sideshows and donuts. And in addition to that, going back to recruitment, one of the things that I'm going to specifically focus on, because these were things that were sort of shared with me, is a very targeted outreach to attract specifically corporals and sergeants. We have a very young force, and we need to make sure we are investing in management, not just to move reform forward, but most importantly, to keep our residents safe. And so those would be the things that I would be proposing to the rest of council and moving forward expeditiously to ensure that our city is safe. And then the last point, and I'm sorry I went on a bit long, is I'm also going to be advocating for an administrative position that sits out of the police department to fully support the neighborhood watch groups that we have across the city.
Thank you. It's right on time. Uh, and now I apologize for skipping over the opening statement, and we will move back to the opening statement. Ms. Placati?
So hi, I'm Brenda Placati, and my background is human resources and payroll. So what I have to bring to this council is the ability to negotiate, to look at benefits, to look at hiring, and to ensure that we have employee relations and a good work environment. Um, I am currently serving on my second term as the vice chair on the Civil Service Commission, and I am the chair of the Marine Advisory Committee. I've been involved in a number of things here in Vallejo as a community activist, but the thing that I'm most proud of is the Straits and Mare Island Growing Association. I was their president for 12 years, and I stepped down simply so I could run for this campaign. I also am involved with through Kaiser running a traumatic brain injury caregiver support group. So I'm definitely in the community. I'm definitely supporting things. I believe what I can bring is somebody who has the time to work on this as a retired person. With my background, I think I can support the city in areas that we really need to look at, which is employment, staffing, and consistency. And I feel like I can bring a firm, strong voice to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Matias, please.
Thank you, Mr. Nesperos. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Matias, and I, like Brenda, am also running to represent District 1 and represent you on council beginning in January. I entered this race as a husband, as a dad, and as a neighbor, sharing the very same concerns that many of you are feeling this evening. As a result, and because I've been walking the district and having conversations with you, I am going to be centering sorry about that, my campaign around three specific areas: community well-being, creating economic opportunity, and transparency and accountability, both in the form of leadership that I want to model, and the expectations that I know you would have of me and that you would expect me to have of staff and folks that I work with. I come to this race leveraging my current experience as Vice President of Operations and Engagement for a nonprofit based out of Oakland that focuses on kids' equity issues across the state, where I serve as a team leader, a problem solver, and a consensus builder, which are things I believe we need to move our city forward at this moment in time. I will also leverage my over 6 years of experience serving in commissions, both as a regular commissioner and also elected by my peers as chairman to deliver results for our community, which I've already done so without serving in an elected role. And I will leverage those experiences in addition to my graduate background in public administration to move our city forward in addressing what has been systemic challenges that we've all known have been there for decades. I very much look forward to answering the rest of questions you have this evening, and very much thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Matias. Moving on to the next question. What specific reforms would you advocate to improve police-community relations? We're rotating. This is a progressive rotation, Mr. Matias.
For sure. Um, I think it's important that we move towards a community policing model where officers have identified beats. They are able to develop relationships with the beats that they have assigned. We have not been able to see that because we've been in a state of emergency for well over a year. And so I think that just that step in and of itself of moving towards that model over time transitioning towards having substations across the city can better relationships between our officers and our community. That's number one. Number two, I also think that it's important for us to move forward with reform. And so I would be in favor of moving forward the specific recommendations that were outlined in the OIR report and the stipulated judgment that was agreed to between the DOJ and the city. And I think through increased collaboration, transparency, and accountability, I think that that will also be a contributor towards better relationships. And lastly, I am very I am in favor of some of the actions that have taken place over the past year, specifically as it relates to events that officers have been holding to really answer questions and to really get to build relationships with members of the community. And so I would be in favor of also ensuring that those things are continuing to happen over the coming years to ensure that these relations are moving forward positively. Positively, sorry.
Thank you. Ms. Placati, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, do you mind, please? Thank you.
I do not mind at all. Uh, what specific reforms would you advocate to improve police-community relations?
Thank you. So, I know there are some neighborhoods that have neighborhood watch programs, but overall the city does not have them. So I think working to build those back up with the relationship with the police department are vital for us. Um, Making sure that we have police officers that everybody gets to know, the community relationship is critical for them to rebuild the trust. We have to rebuild the trust with our police officers. I think having the current way that the police department is sharing out what's going on to the public is a great first step, but it needs to go further. We need to have regular community town hall type of situations where people can really talk with them and see what's going on. And we need to make sure that we're working with the DOJ as quickly and as efficiently as we can so that we get out from under their control, because that is costly to our city. And we need to make sure that we are putting the right progression and policies in place. And that's working with both the union and the non-union people to get the city back under control.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Now, this is also your question. What measures would you implement to increase transparency and accountability in Vallejo's local government?
Okay, so I really believe in an open door policy, and that means being accessible to the community. I also think we need to have more town halls. I think after a decision is made by the city council, we need to be able to give an explanation out to the public why we made that decision. They might hear a piece of it during the meeting, but they might not understand the full reason why we've made the decision we have. And we need to be able to stand up for what we've decided is best for the city. So it's town halls, it's open communication, it's accessibility, um, and it's just making sure that we aren't doing things that they can't see the results or the reasoning behind is really, to me, is the most important thing.
Mr. Matias, would you like for me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Mr. Nesperos. Um, I think that there's sort of a multi-pronged approach to deal with transparency and accountability. At its core, there is a lot of mistrust in our community because promises that were made in the past have not been kept, one. And then two, anytime that there's been decisions made, to Brenda's point, the rationale or reasoning behind that decision making has not been clearly articulated or communicated to the community. Now, we can do those things immediately following city council meetings, but we must understand that structurally, that's not the way that the city consumes information. You have to meet people where they're at. So I am a firm believer in getting to people's doors and sharing out updates on what's happening, holding town halls and doing so in where people live to make it accessible to them, having different forms of information available, and communicating to folks via email, dropping leaflets, you name it, really getting the information to folks where they're at. And then there is the very real role that our current structures of government hold. And so I can tell you, having served in two commissions, I've actually leveraged my authority as chairman over the past 6 years to hold staff accountable on projects, whether you're talking about street repavement initiatives or public safety. We had rampant crime in our businesses last winter. And so, in addition to holding public hearings at the commissions and making sure that I was getting firm deadlines and timelines from folks, I was also making sure that we were subsequently getting that information out to the community through our business walks, and when we were having business spotlight interviews with folks we were sitting down with. And then lastly, I think it's just as important to hold folks accountable at the council meetings, and I've done so calling in to many meetings over the years.
Thank you, Mr. Matias. Um, Over the weekend, there was quite a few news articles regarding the community selection panel for the chief of police. The panel was selected by the council members and the mayor, but there was no African American representation. So it appears that the council had not talked to each other. What would you do to increase collaboration amongst the city council members?
I think it all starts with, you know, relationships and extending your hand and knowing that even when you disagree on something, you still need to keep working at those relationships. I've had the opportunity over many years to collaborate with many of the city council members that are on the dais right now. And so I would, be coming into the position in January, having relationships in place and being able to have the space to dialogue and to communicate with folks, especially when there's disagreement. And so I think that that's key, a key important ingredient of fostering better collaboration, in addition to finding opportunities to find areas of alignment. And that can obviously be done through council meetings, listening to people's perspectives, but that can also be done in private, very intentionally, knowing where our areas where we can move forward together. And so those would be the specific things that I would continue to do, and I have already been doing them for many years. That's why I've been able to get some wins and get some results forward for the community. But as it relates to the specific article that you mentioned over the that came up over the weekend, I think it is important to raise awareness around the selection process and the representation that's coming from different quadrants of the city. I hope and expect with this new city manager that just joined that he is hearing the feedback that he is getting from the community, not just through the article, but also through social media, and that he adequately responds to make sure that the best choice that's made for the chief is one that everyone, no matter where they live, can get behind.
Thank you. Ms. Placati, do you need for me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good, thank you. Um, so that article, really raises a problem that we have, which is lack of communication. Now, we do have to be careful how the communication is happening because of the Brown Act. We can't be meeting separately. We can't be doing those types of things. So we really need to make sure that we're meeting in public and discussing them. And it should be something that we can discuss at a council meeting in front of everyone so that they see what's going on. And these things should be able to be brought up. And it should all be part of the conversation, is to make sure all groups are being represented when we're having a meeting or a commission or a board brought together to help in these things. So it's really about communication. As Alex said, relationships are important. We have to be able to talk to each other whether we agree or not, but we have to make sure that we are looking at everything in an inclusive way and that we are looking at all the different groups that need to be brought in.
Thank you, ma'am. Uh, your question, Ms. Placati, is what are your first year priorities and how will you accomplish them?
So my first year priorities obviously is public safety number one, and that's working with the city manager and the council to fill some of these positions, but not only in the police department, which is critical, but also in our city staffing positions. We constantly are told that the city staff can't come out and do something because they don't have the staff. So we really need to look at the staffing, the salaries. We need to look at how we're recruiting and how we're retaining staff. Retention is a critical thing. So in the first year, that would be one of the things. The other thing is I truly believe we need to work on the financial aspect of where our money goes. In this year's budget process, they did a budget, and 2 weeks later, the city came back and asked for a change. But budgets need to be made and understood what they're for. We should be able to foresee out what is coming the full year. We shouldn't be changing our budget every 2 weeks, every month, because some new thing has just popped up. And to move money from our general fund, from our proposed budget into the general fund needs to be determined. So really looking at how we're using our money and not not just putting it out there in the general fund so it can go where it doesn't belong. And also, I really want to get the community back involved. I believe there's a lot of people sitting at home that want to support and help drive Vallejo up. And so that would mean like asking them to help us find grants. I bet there's a lot of people out there that sit at a computer and know how to write grants. Help the city get the money that we keep hearing is available and get them out with their ideas. They have a lot of ideas on how to solve problems. Let's listen to what they have to say. Let's get their support. Let's really use their information to help move the city forward so that they have pride in us. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Matias, do you need for me to repeat the question? I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you, sir.
I said it was fine, and I thanked you. There are four areas that I would tackle. One of them is not necessarily sausage making, but I think it's like equally as important, and there are actions that I think I could just take by serving in the office. One, safety. We can't keep talking about getting more police officers in-house. We can't keep talking about, paying them better. We actually have to do something. My plan, which I outlined at the start of this conversation, is very tactical. These are things that we can move forward over the next 6 months, and they don't need drawn out plans and discussions that never end. So I will be forcefully advocating for that. And then around safety, which now we're going into rainy season, so here we go again with the same thing. There is a streets plan that was proposed by staff at the earlier this year, and so there is some financing questions that are still outstanding around that plan, and then we need to start implementing it. And so I would be holding them accountable to make sure that both on the policing front, on our streets, and generally around the concerns that folks have around crime that's coming down. Number two, homelessness. I've heard it everywhere I knocked. Many people want to see that situation addressed. We need a plan for that. We need to finish our projects, and we need to do so within our means as a city because we're in a resource constrained environment. And then three, economic development. There's a strategic plan that's going to be presented to council next month. And I don't want to repeat the same mistakes of the past where we just prepared a plan, it received no funding, and it didn't move forward. If we want to create jobs, if we want
Thank
to
you,
attract
Mr.
more
Matias.
business, we have to move that forward.
Now, you have the next question as well. Do you support creating a charter change task force? And if so, what changes would you advocate?
Yeah, so it's actually very interesting you asked me that because I actually asked at one of the first meet and greet that I had if folks would be interested in that. And one of the questions that I got, well, what parts of the charter would you want to change and why? Would it be, mayor duties and powers? Would it be this? Would it be that? And so I think the first thing I'd want to do is just get a pulse from the city if that is something that they want to revisit. I think the most important part, so I'm not opposed to it, but I want to make sure that the community is aligned with moving forward with that process. Because something I've heard over the years, but when I asked at the first meet and greet, folks were sort of on and off about it. So that's one. But separately, I think the most important thing that I think we need the community's involvement with is really digging in on the budget and seeing ways not just to grow it, but to realize efficiencies that can allow us to redirect funds to address the challenges that we're experiencing. So I'd be in favor more of a budget committee or review commission than a charter unless the community says otherwise.
Thank you. Ms. Plicati, do you need the question again?
No, I'm good. Thanks. I think a charter change right now, there's so many things that we need to address that are critical for Vallejo to get out of the slump that we're in, that unless there was truly something that would move the really move where the mark to where we're going to end up, I think right now is not the time for any charter changes. I think we need to stick with what we have, focus on the things that have to be focused on, and then down the road, if a charter change seems like it's necessary, then take the time to do it there, but not right away.
Thank you. Um, there has been criticism from several different commissioners that there's a lack of face-to-face interaction between the commissions and the city council. Are you willing to support improved council interaction with the different city commissions? Ms. Placati?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You know, as somebody who serves on those, uh, we have very little interaction. Uh, our meetings get canceled at the last minute. I really believe we need to look at the number of commissions and committees and boards that we have, redefine whether they're really providing a service to us. If there is a need for that, then the council needs to be hearing from them on a regular basis. Every month, they should be turning in some report. Now, like some of the commissions and councils and boards only meet quarterly or every other month. They don't even meet monthly. So for them to even move forward, to move an agenda forward, it's they totally are not being effective because of the lack amount of time that they get to meet and the lack of information that comes from the council back to the committees and the commissions is makes them almost ineffective right now. So I would strongly want to see them reviewed, re-looked at, make sure that they are serving the purpose that we want to, and then invite that information. That's why we made them, was to get the information from them to move the city forward. And that's what we need to be listening to.
Thank you. Mr. Matias?
Um, I have to sort of piggyback off of a point Brenda made earlier in the conversation around our people and really tapping into the expertise and the experiences that they have. I think that's our greatest asset as a city. And so I've been personally a beneficiary of having council members who actually really fought hard to have our commissions present to council and then to actually collaborate with council and like driving results for the city. And so I would definitely be a champion and an advocate to make that happen. But similarly, I also agree with Brenda, that we have to also look at the number of commissions and whether or not we can realize some efficiencies there, because we have to be very focused in what we're hoping to accomplish. And at the same time, it's a very fine dance that we have to straddle, and like how much total collective time that takes up from staff. And so I would be open to a review there, but definitely see the incredible value that it has, given that, we've been able to move a lot of work through the two commissions that I've served in over the past 6 years.
Thank you. Again, for you, Mr. Matias. How close to bankruptcy is Vallejo? What specific steps, measures will you push to improve the economic health of Vallejo?
For sure. So, I think right now, the city has always set a 15% sort of reserve target of the general fund. And we are at about 15%. So the path over the past couple of years, council has built up a reserve. But when you talk about the budget, we're sort of straddling the line, breaking even or slightly under. And that's the outlook over the next 5 years. Now, um, I took the very difficult step, even though it was something I did not agree with, but in the sake of transparency, I'm sharing it with you all this evening, to support a tax measure that would get us additional funding in the door, to really address the areas that need to be addressed, that would position us for long-term economic growth. And so, what would I specifically do? It would be a continuation of what I've been doing over the past couple of years and then some. One, we have to make sure we're supporting our small businesses, and we have to do so prioritizing safety and making sure that we're sort of finding ways to have folks expand and then creating the environment to attract new businesses to come for our town. We have to also increase the housing supply, and we do that looking at our business district corridors. How do we facilitate development taking place in those areas, and how do we specifically focus on mixed use development that also brings new businesses into our city? We can do that very intentionally once we focus on this new plan that's going to get implemented. And then in addition to that, I also feel like we need to also find ways to stimulate our own economy. We've been able to do that through the Vallejo Main Street organization that I've led, really increasing foot traffic in the downtown area. I see that happening across the city with more intentional focus and investment. And so those would be some of the things that I would do to not just address long-term economic development, really focusing on the key areas in the city that need to move forward, but also making sure that we're being responsible with our taxpayer dollars to avoid bankruptcy.
Thank you. Ms. Placati, do you need the question repeated?
No, I'm good, thank you. Um, so obviously, the last thing anybody wants to do is go through bankruptcy again. And I don't believe that's a necessary step for us at all. I think we're on the road to financial better place. We do have to be paying attention to the budgets that we have, which is why I brought that up earlier. You know, our budgets should be known so that we are not flip-flopping around and trying to scramble for money and take money from this project to that project. So I do think as long as we stay attentive to where our money is going financially, we are on the way to recovery. I do think there's a number of things that we can do to promote business here. Obviously, public safety is in everyone's mind, but it's not just public safety. It's also the permitting process to get a new business here. It's also all the extra fees that somebody comes against. And we need to make sure that we are inviting businesses here in a welcoming way instead of saying now we have more permits and we have more fees and we have more this and we can't do that. We need to look at the zoning. We need to make sure that we are meeting the needs of people. We need to make sure our mom and pops are well taken care of. We also have to change the overview outlook of what Vallejo is seen as. Our narrative. Our narrative needs to change as we start to see the improvements in our safety and making sure that everybody is seeing what they need. So Vallejo is the hub, and it should be the hub of Solano County. Everything is here. So we need to start working with businesses to get them here. But we not only need to work with businesses to get them here, but we need to make sure our people have the skills to get the jobs so that they can reap the benefits of the businesses coming here. So it's apprenticeship programs, internship programs, working with the schools. So again, we have to be working to find the right businesses to bring in, but we also have to make sure that our people can fill those positions to reap the benefits of those businesses coming here. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, this is your question, Ms. Placati. How would you attract new businesses and industries to Vallejo while still supporting small businesses?
So I think it really does start with the narrative of Vallejo. Vallejo right now, you only see them on the news when it's something bad. You only hear about Vallejo if it's the sideshows, if it's a crime, if it's a homicide. All those things are happening here. So as we start to see control coming over our city, whether it's through the working relationship with the sheriffs, with the CHP, with all the different organizations, and getting other security people in, we have to show that we are headed in the right direction. Once we're headed there, then we can start looking at what businesses would benefit here, what would be a good fit for Vallejo. And so we just need to really work on that narrative because I think businesses want to come here. You know, location wise, it's easy to get to. You can come from San Francisco on the ferry. We have all sorts of transportation. We are less expensive to have property on and to businesses on. We have plenty of empty buildings that need to be filled. So I think once we get the narrative started to change, we can start reaching out to the different businesses and they'll want to come here. I think it'll be something that people will be jumping at the opportunity to come and have their business in Vallejo when we can show that they will be safe.
Thank you. Mr. Matias?
Thank you. So I definitely agree with Brenda, right? I think it's important to really focus on changing the narrative of the city. More tactically, here are the things that I would sort of propose. We have a lot of small businesses in Vallejo right now, and oftentimes what they need is an additional push from the city to expand. And so I would be working very closely with the county and the incoming county supervisors, which are supporting our effort to establish a revolving loan fund that would allow our small businesses to expand and hire more folks here in Vallejo. We also have a lot of vacant buildings, to Brenda's point. And so how can the city council more intentionally work with those building owners to have those spaces made available to our all of our entrepreneurs across the city? And how do we get more entrepreneurship into those brick and mortars, hiring folks internally? I think if we do that, coupled with a strong safety strategy, only then will you start to then be able to show that we've got the labor, we've got the workforce with the appropriate skill sets. And I think there it's important to leverage apprenticeships and partnerships with our unions. And then it's also just as important to show that the city is prioritizing small business expansion by doing those sorts of initiatives that I've just outlined. And so I would focus on really our homegrown effort first, and over time have that be a marker for folks who may be looking at us and maybe wanting to relocate here, knowing that there'll be some data that they'll be able to look at and then react to.
Thank you. Next question is, oh, my timer went off. Just 1 second. Okay. How do you promote well-paying jobs in Vallejo, Mr. Matias?
How do I promote well-paying jobs in Vallejo? So again, this goes back to the last conversation we were just having, right? Um, we sort of need several initiatives to be moving forward at the same time. We need to be able to first and foremost show that the businesses that are here in our town are thriving and that they're providing livable wages. We also need to make sure that there is development taking place across our city that are also paying livable wages to folks. And then at the same time, we also need to make sure that all of the schools that are producing talent here in our community are doing so aligned to businesses that are looking for specific talent. So, what I mean by that specifically is I know one of our community colleges has an auto program that allows folks to go into being a mechanic or to be able to like work in with EVs. And so, how do we make sure that as folks are thinking about establishing service centers, as folks are thinking about the evolution of the automotive industry, they're thinking about Vallejo, right? So we have to be really focused on the industries that we know are our strong suits, even leveraging companies like Factory OS. And then we have to double down on really showing that our workforce is skilled, that there are good paying jobs here, and that folks are able to afford living in this town. And then only then we are then able to show that information to folks who may be looking at us as a potential destination and be a serious contender to have them relocate here and create more opportunity and more jobs in our city.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Placati,
Mike, can you reread that for me, please?
I would be happy to. How do you promote well-paying jobs in Vallejo?
So I'm not quite sure whether we're talking about well-paying jobs just as in general, or are we talking about well-paying jobs within the city and the city and governments? So there's two different things there. One is the well-paying jobs in the city government. California, you have to put out what your salary ranges are. So it would start to show up when you're promoting jobs, and that would also be seen when they are posting jobs. Then it's really about, I think that the well-paying job piece will come out when they hear no matter where they're going to work, is a good work environment. The work environment drives people to come. The salary will help keep them here. And so you really need to make sure that what we're promoting is it's a great place to come, it's a great place to live, it's a great place to work, and it's a great place to have your outside activities. So all those things, when you can show that those things are happening, will automatically lead to, obviously we're paying well for all these things to be happening. So I don't think you really have to promote so much that there's well-paying jobs. It's more the attitude that comes with it when people are receiving good pay, livable wages that they can then it just kind of goes through osmosis almost. Whenever I've worked at different companies, it's always more the how is it to work there, and then the salary steps in after that. So it has to show that this is a good place to be, and then the well-paying job will come out of that conversation.
Thank you. This next question is for you also, and I think you can see that our thinking is much aligned with both of you. How would you address the problem of vacant properties in downtown? Ms. Placati?
So vacant properties is a huge issue, and what is sad is what I've heard while I've been out walking and talking to different business owners and property owners is it's cheaper for them just to leave the building vacant than deal with it. Partly because there's so many, the older buildings have to have they need to be brought up to code. They're not up to code for either earthquakes and plumbing and electrical. So people don't want to put the money into it because they don't think they're going to get the return because they can't ask for the decent rents back. So I do think that there has to be something put in place that if a building is vacant for so long and you cannot show that you have tried to rent this out, that there is a penalty fee for that. We need to have those buildings used, and we need to have them offering different deals so that people can go to those brick and mortars and start their businesses there. I have heard of several businesses that wanted to go into different vacant buildings, and the owners go, nah, I'd rather leave it empty than have to deal with a renter. So we need to change that philosophy. And the only thing that I can see that will change that is give them a period of time to get it rented, make sure it's up to code. And then if they don't rent it, there has to be some kind of penalty for them to leave them vacant for year after year after year.
Thank you. Mr. Matias?
Thank you. So a couple things. Uh, Definitely, a lot of the older buildings need to be brought up to code. That takes a significant amount of investment. And so folks who may have purchased that building for, you know, a decent size of money, don't have the means now to invest what it needs to bring it back up to code. And so I think there, if we want to spur some redevelopment and the leasing out of those spaces, the city has to step in and has to be a partner, leveraging federal and state grants that are available to facilitate the correction of some of those issues. Now, while at the same time the city has to play a role in helping facilitate that, the city also needs to have a vacant building registration program. And you do that not just to make sure that folks know that they also have to be a player in helping our downtown and our other business districts thrive, but you also do that to have a good pulse of what space is available that you can then be able to go out to folks and let them know that that space is available to meet their needs. So I think we do need to implement that, and we need to make sure that there is enforcement. Right before the pandemic hit, there was an expansion of the existing powers to include commercial property, but then our entire code enforcement division left to other jurisdictions for better pay and better hours. Now we're up to five code enforcement officers as of last Monday. And so I think over the next couple of years, you guys will see enforcement on the commercial side, number one. And then number two, you will also see a very intentional effort to make sure that there is movement happening on those buildings. Now, I have spent a lot of time in the downtown area. It's happening, but it's happening very slowly. I think the city government has a role to play in accelerating that, and that would be one of the things that I would be focused on over the next couple of years.
Thank you, sir. How should the city address the issues surrounding the homeless and unhoused?
Um, so, I sort of touched on this earlier. Um, and it's important to contextualize this answer, right? So, we've received funding. Some of that funding has gone to uh, different projects. We've got the Navigation Center, we've got the Broadway project, and some of that funding has been also been made available for supportive services. At the same time, the vice mayor proposed and actually got buy-in from the rest of council to have the city identify a central location where supportive resources would be provided to the unhoused community. Now, that was 2 years ago, hasn't been done. We need a central location that we designate as an encampment zone where we provide supportive services, and we need the county and we need the state to partner with us in providing those services and providing the appropriate funding. We simply do not have the money to be able to provide the level of support that's needed. Now, I touched on projects because it's also important that we as a city are looking at providing different opportunities for housing in our community. So the Sacramento project was just finished 2 years ago. We also need to look at other opportunities to provide additional tiers of housing to different members of our community, and also get them the skills necessary for them to get not just the services and supports that they need, but also the training for jobs. And then at the same time, it's also important that we really define as a community what it is that we're doing and what are the defined outcomes. The state has poured $22 billion into homelessness, and it's only been when you've had a plan with defined outcomes and an assigned, dollar amount that you've been able to see some results, like some of the innovative ideas that have come out of San Jose. And so we need to make sure we go through that process. We need to make sure we finish the existing projects, and we also need to make sure we identify that central location all within our means. And just as important, it's just as important for us to clean up the encampments we do have, because there have been many fires, there have been um, unsanitary conditions, and that poses a risk to the rest of the community. And so it's important to have that conversation, align around goals, and make sure we get the work done over the next year and a half, 2 years.
Thank you. Ms. Placati?
So the unhoused and homelessness is such a huge issue, and it's a really hard one to tackle, obviously, because it's not just a Vallejo or California problem, it's a nationwide problem. I did just participate in the COC's meeting about the unsheltered and the unhoused. And one of the things that they talked about a lot is how Vallejo is not part of the regional support system that's there. We don't take advantage of it. So number one is we need to get that relationship built, because there are a number of services countywide that we are not taking advantage of. So we need to get connected with the county. We need to get connected with the state and different agencies to come up with the resources that are there and get them shared into Vallejo. We also need to and get our all of our nonprofits that currently are helping the unhoused, uh, and really pull them together and see what services are they providing, what services have a gap in it, where do we pull the strengths, and where do we find the weaknesses and try and solve that problem. We have the new service, the new Navigation Center and the Broadway Center and the Sacramento Housing that's all just reopened or is about to open and has opened. Um, but that's not enough to serve the population. So we need to look at where they can live, if we need to find a location for them that is safe and has provides the services. But we also need to look at that not everyone that's unhoused wants those services. And so we have to come up with what that plan would be for the people that don't want the services. They just want to be left alone and do what they want. Uh, we need everybody to be safe. That means all of our people that live here need to be safe from fires, from thefts, and from all those things. So it's really a plan of coming together with all the different groups to to really come up with a better plan than what's happened. Thanks.
Thank you. What, this is also for you, Ms. Placati. What would you like to see developed at the waterfront?
Oh, the waterfront. Well, it should have something for everyone. So when we talk about the waterfront, it should be, and it has gotten much better where we're having activities down there, but it should be someplace that is inviting for all people to come down and have different activities. The fishing, the just enjoying the waterfront, having restaurants, having shops and shows and things that can go on all the time. But part of the waterfront that has to be really addressed is the marina, because they have let the marina go into such disrepair. If we could get our marina at least shrunken and put up to standards, that would bring in so many boats. We are constantly told that, I hear from people down at the marina all the time, if the marina was better, we would have our boat here, which would bring people to Vallejo, which would bring the different businesses down that will provide the entertainment. It should be a place, the ferry comes in there. There should be different things happening that takes people to different places. We get a connection with the Sassoon Valley Winery Company, and have the wine tasting go there instead of up to Napa necessarily. But there's all sorts of things that can happen when people have easy access to our marina. And it should have things, like I said, maybe even a great play area for the kids to be at, so that they're there during the day and they can play down there. There just needs to be something for everybody at that waterfront.
Thank you. Mr. Matias?
Yes. So definitely share um, Brenda's concerns around the marina. There's been an underinvestment in the marina for many years. And I think that needs to be an area of focus as we think about a waterfront plan in the next couple of years. There needs to be a mix of everything. There needs to be housing. I think we need to look at possible housing opportunities that go along the waterfront. I would also be supportive of a park, as well as more development of like restaurants around that area. And I think we also need to, this is gonna be an effort that's gonna take many years. Just in the next 2 years, they want to develop a downtown specific plan, and then they want to develop a waterfront plan. And so anytime you talk about a plan, it's gonna take a few years. There is low hanging fruit that I think we can go after right away. And that can be everything from lighting along the waterfront area to setting up um, very intentional events for folks that may be getting off the ferry to drive foot traffic along that area. And so I would be really looking forward to focusing and partnering with our county and our state officials to see what are some like small scale projects that we can drive forward as we engage developers to realize the vision of what we ultimately want to see, understanding that that is something that's going to take some time. And so I'd be focused more on the low hanging fruit that I've identified just now, and then chip away at whatever plan comes out of the process that the city's going to undertake beginning next year.
Thank you, Mr. Matias. So the next question is also for you. Do you support or oppose the Scotts Valley Casino and Tribal Housing Project? And why?
Yeah, so right now, as it's currently constructed, I don't support the casino project. And I just want to put out there that this is a process that's going federal review right now. They will be the ones that will have the ultimately determination. Now, personally, I've just shared with you how I feel about it. Their proposal, if you review it, says that security and safety will be addressed by way of a contract with the Vallejo Police Department, which we all know is severely understaffed. And so, how can you really count on addressing those issues when those are challenges that we're experiencing as a city? And so, I would not be supportive of that project in its current form. But if the federal government decides that that project's going to move forward, I'm going to make sure that whatever community benefits agreement comes out of that process is one that benefits our city and allows us to make progress on our key areas of safety, homelessness, economic development, and so forth. And so, I'm going to be monitoring how that decision unfolds over the next couple months, and then we'll appropriately deliberate if and when that comes, and if I'm elected, and we'll share our additional thoughts at that point in time. But those are the concerns I share in this moment.
Thank you very much. Um, Ms. Placati?
Well, I don't think it really matters whether I like the project or not. If the project is determined by the federal government to happen, it's going to happen. So really what for me is the most important thing is looking at what the requirements are and negotiating the best deal for Vallejo that we can. And that would mean, making sure that they have to hire local workers, making sure that they're paying out to us or supporting different things to us. Um, you know, I know traffic is an issue for people the way they think about it. When I've talked with them, they're concerned about the traffic changes, the light that will invade our city, uh, potential crime and things. But I think realistically, when and if it comes to fruition, it will be about negotiating with the tribe for the best deal that we can do. Uh, whether I like it or not really is irrelevant to the subject.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is also for you, Ms. Placati. How do you prioritize the city's budget going forward to ensure fiscal responsibility while at the same time addressing critical needs like public safety, infrastructure, and social services?
So I think I've kind of addressed this already, but looking at the budget and how they did it this year was just a flip over with a little bit of a reduction. They didn't look at the number of jobs they had opening. They didn't look at any of the past things that they needed to define whether that was the real budget. And so my goal would be to be sitting down, working with the city manager, who would then work with the finance department and his department heads to really make sure that they're looking at what does the needs of the city and what have we agreed to take care of, what are those needs, let's define them, and those have to be our priority. Things cannot just go to the general fund and get moved and done with other things. We need to make sure that we have our priorities straight. We have obligations that the city has agreed to that have been ignored. We need to make sure that we are doing the things that we have taxed people for, that the roads are being fixed, that everything that we have said we were going to do is being done and in the right priority. So it's really a sit down conversation to make sure that everything that we have obligated ourselves to as a city council, that we are taking care of business first and not worrying about some of the other, I want to say fluff things. They're not really fluff, but they might not be serving the immediate need to move us forward. And that's what we have to focus on.
Thank you, Ms. Placati. Mr. Matias?
Thank you. So I have serious concerns with how the budget process unfolds. And it's a cycle that we've kind of been going through for many years now. They pass a budget. The budget, and I'll just give you one example, says we're going to have 131 police officers, which we all know is not going to happen, in the immediate future. And then after that gets approved, that's money that then gets moved around and spent, and we don't have any visibility into that. The first thing I want to know is how much does it cost to run our city? Right now, it says we have a $284 million budget. Is it really 284 million, or is it more 250 million? I think that number is important just to give the residents clarity, and to know what is our starting point. And then over the next couple of years, again, if you think about the priorities that we've identified, economic development has been the number one priority of this city council for a long time. And yet, when it comes to funding specific programs or identifying policies that can spur growth, like looking at our zoning code, like investing in organizations that can drive foot traffic and by extension increase sales tax revenue. There's always a fight, or there's not an appropriate level of investment made to really drive those results forward. And so I'm going to make sure we're very focused in the priorities that we've outlined and that we're putting dollars behind it. And then most importantly, in helping us avoid additional tax measures, additional expenditures down the line, I think it's just as important for us to really start tapping into state and federal funding. That's not something we've done a good job of, and everyone's aware of it. And I think it's something we need to focus on. And I'd be leveraging my background to make sure we make strides in that respect.
Thank you, sir. Question from the Q&A. Given that Vallejo's current total crime rate is above the national average, what immediate action do you champion to address this ever-increasing crime rate? And Mr. Matias, this is for you.
Yeah, 100%. So there is the short term and then the long term. The short term, I already sort of alluded to this at the start of the conversation. We need to make sure we place deterrence in place so that folks are not choosing Vallejo as a destination to come and commit crime. Through my conversations with law enforcement officials and with city staff, I've been able to identify practical solutions I can champion beginning in January, some of which I've already advocated for in council meetings. But long term, what we need to do is create more experiences, invest in our kids, invest in our community. And if we do that, I think you will start to see a downward sloping trend as it relates to our crime. And that's everything from creating jobs to really investing in our schools and our kids, and to making sure that we create experiences that will deter folks from committing crime. And I'll just give a short example. Um, I alluded to the Vallejo Main Street organization, which is something that came out of, we relaunched it out of the Economic Development Commission. We've held 10 events over the past 2 years, and we have not had one single safety incident in the past 2 years. And we've welcomed close to 15,000 folks, 7,000 the first year, and about 8,000 this year, where folks got to enjoy themselves. They had a grand old time, not just their kids, but every member of the family. And not one time did we report or did you see Vallejo in the news. And so we need to do more of that. And then we need to do the things that I've outlined earlier in the call to ensure that that's addressed, and it's addressed once and for all, because it's something we've been battling with for a long time.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Placati, do you need the question read to you again?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I think, right away we need to get the security, get police officers out on the streets that are visible. We need to get the working with the sheriff's department to get them visible, and even the highway patrol. Even though the highway patrol will only do vehicle violations, just having them more visible, all the different agencies more visible, will help deter people from coming here to commit crimes. We need to work very hard to figure out how we're going to work with the Vallejo Union, PD Union, so that it can embrace the need for change. We need to make sure that they are looking at us as their community that they're serving, that they have a responsibility to be a real true part of our community. And then we need to, as Alex was saying, and I said before, we need to have things so that the young people are busy, that the people that are doing crimes have other avenues that they can see respectful jobs and they can get out there and earn money. And then we also need to make sure that we have the neighborhood watches back in place. I think those are critical for us to move forward. We have to have the neighborhood watches, not to be tattletaling on each other, but to see things so that we can get responses. And of course, we need the police to be able to respond to those. So that's why we need the collaboration of all the different organizations. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. The next question, uh, also for you, Ms. Placati. Where do you stand on Proposition 36 and why?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know what Proposition 36 is off the top of my head. Sorry.
I can't help you. I don't know what it is either. Mr. Matias, do you know what it is?
I don't know if that, I don't know if that's the one that addresses like retail theft and the 950 range. Because I know the governor just signed a ton of laws addressing loopholes that allow folks to like get away with repeated offenses. It may be that, I'm not sure.
Okay,
Uh,
I'm going to set that question aside. And uh, would you, again, Ms. Placati, this is you. Would you support a totally independent police oversight committee? Yes, no, or why?
Um, I think we need oversight. Um, but the oversight has to be on a basis that is fair from all different angles. Um, right now, Vallejo we have a problem with holding the history as what is going on today. And we have to remember that history is history. We don't want to forget it, but we do need to be able to move past it. And I do believe that we're on the right path to move past it, but until that trust is rebuilt, there needs to be oversight shared so that we can make sure that all the community needs are being met.
Mr. Matias?
we don't have a choice. It needs to get done. Um, the Police Oversight Commission is already in place, was voted on 2 years ago, and those commissioners are receiving training. I think we're past the point of like debating whether or not it needs to be in place given the loss of life and treasure that we've experienced as a community. And so I would be supportive of the existing effort underway, consistent with the agreement that was signed. And I would make sure that there is communication and bridge building taking place between law enforcement and our community. At the end of the day, every officer that I've had an opportunity to interact with has shared with me that they care deeply about Vallejo and they want to see the city move forward. And similarly, community members want to get to a place where reform is implemented and they also get to feel safe. I mean, we hear it all every day as we walk. And so I would serve as a bridge, even leveraging my own lived experiences to make sure that that's addressed over the next couple of years and hopefully come out of this process with a force that is responsive to the community, that has trust with the community, and that is keeping the community safe.
Thank you, sir. And the next question, again, is for you, Mr. Matias. Are you endorsing anyone for mayor? Why?
I am not endorsing any candidate for mayor, and I've been very clear on that from day one. Um, I've been asked by the candidates for endorsements, and I just frankly cannot endorse candidates in that race for different reasons. And so I'm staying out and I'm focused on my district and serving my constituents if elected. But will tell you that I've had opportunities to collaborate with each one of the folks running for mayor, and so would be in a position to move our collective interests forward no matter who's elected mayor in November.
Thank you, Ms. Placati.
I am not endorsing anyone either because when I'm elected, uh, who I'll be working with, I won't know until then. And I believe no matter who it is, I can work with them. I've talked with all of them. I know where their thoughts are. Uh, but to endorse someone, I just feel is not appropriate at this time because I don't know who I'll be working with.
Thank you. Uh, Final question, beginning with you, Ms. Placati. Will you commit to regular town halls with the Hiddenbrooke community and at what intervals? And follow that up with your closing statement of why should the voters select you to represent us?
So I'd absolutely commit to town halls, not only with the Hiddenbrooke community, but with all the communities within the district. uh, because I think it's an important part of knowing what's going on and hearing from the community. Uh, and then it would be as often as you guys want it to be. I mean, if you wanted to meet with me every 2 weeks, I'd meet with you every 2 weeks. If I wanted to do it monthly or quarterly, it's all about making time for the people that vote for you, because we're representing you. We have to be available to you. So yes, absolutely. And I just would like to kind of do my closing statement as, what I would bring to this job is a responsibility. I am very responsible. I am somebody who will always have an open door. I am accountable. You can ask me something and I will do what I say I'm going to do. Uh, I believe in this town. I believe it has all the potential that we should have. We're just not moving in the right direction. I'm going to be willing to make some hard decisions and stand up to them and be able to explain to you why those decisions I have made are what I've made. Uh, I've been here a long time, almost 27 years, and I want to see this city prosper. And I think I'm the person that can help us get there. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Matias, do you need the question repeated?
No. So absolutely. The type of campaign we've been running is a campaign that meets folks where they're at. You need me to come home? I'll come to your home. I'll sit down and I'll have a conversation with you. And folks of the Hiddenbrooke community can tell you that I've done exactly that, not just through this process, but over the past couple of years as we formed friendships, meaningful friendships. And so I would definitely commit towards having town hall meetings. And I think the type of campaign we're running is sort of emblematic of the type of leadership I hope to um, exhibit on behalf of the people that I serve. Then I'll transition to my closing statement. Um, there's sort of two things that I want to touch on as we close this evening. And those are things that I've heard from many of you as I've walked. We have a growing number of families, young kids that are very concerned about the future of the city of Vallejo, that have heard time and time again politicians come every 4 years and make promises about what they will do, only to be disappointed. And as they reach critical milestones with their kiddos and they think about the type of childhood they want to give them, they are concerned that perhaps Vallejo may not be that home for them. I want to create that home for all Vallejoans and for those families that are waiting for help to come, with knowing that I'm living that with my 3-year-old. I also want to be responsive to the many seniors that I've spoken to, not just through this process, but also 4 years ago when I ran the first time. Many seniors who told me to my face that they were sad that their kids had moved elsewhere to raise their families, and that they weren't part of that experience that they had hoped Vallejo would provide for them. I have the experience, not just with promises anymore, but with results, to continue to move the city forward. And I will be joining on day one with the experiences and results for you to move our city forward expeditiously. And so thank you for your time this evening. If you want to learn more, you can go to matiasfordistrict1.com. And I'm more than happy, as I've done through this process, to come down and chat with you and answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matias. Dr. Shessel?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, as president of the Hiddenbrooke Property Owners Association, I'd like to thank the candidates for taking their time tonight. Hopefully,